Hello, it's 2 p.m. here in Paris. You're watching France 24 with me, Claire Pride, and these are the top stories. The EU starts legal action against the UK, this over legislation that would overwrite the withdrawal agreement. The bill cleared its final stage in the House of Commons this week. Should Turkey be sanctioned over its actions in the Eastern Mediterranean? One of the issues at the EU Council meeting starting today, the post-election situation in Belarus also on the agenda. And Russia and France step up calls for a ceasefire in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Fighting between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces started on Sunday. We start with the EU launching legal action against the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson having ignored calls for contentious legislation to be dropped. The internal market bill would override parts of the Brexit withdrawal agreement and break international law. The UK government says it's a necessary safety net to protect trade between different parts of the UK. It now has a few weeks to respond to the European Commission's formal letter of notice.
The Commission has decided to send a letter of formal notice to the UK government. This is the first step in an infringement procedure. The letter invites the UK government to send its observations within a month. And besides this, the Commission will continue to work hard towards a full and timely implementation of the withdrawal agreement. We stand by our commitments.
For more on this, I'm now joined by our European Affairs editor, Catherine Nicholson. Catherine, tell us more then about this legal action, and will it be dropped if a trade deal is secured?
Well, I think we can see it more as the fact that the EU sees it as these contentious provisions in the Internal Markets Bill must themselves be dropped for a trade deal with the EU to happen. That's certainly what we're hearing from many voices around the EU at this point. If the Internal Markets Bill became law in the UK, it would allow the UK to just disregard parts of the withdrawal agreement, the Brexit deal, which is a treaty negotiated and signed by Boris Johnson on behalf of the UK. And therefore, this means, breaking international law. And it would allow the parts of the deal that deal with trade between the British mainland and Northern Ireland to be disregarded. Now, the UK government is saying that this is simply a safety net that they want to have in place in case in the future the EU makes any kind of demands that it sees as unreasonable and which might impede trade between the British mainland and Northern Ireland. But the European Union sees it as the Internal Market Bill threatens to bring back a hard border on the island of Ireland between Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and the Republic of Ireland, remaining part of the EU. And that would then, as they see it, threaten peace on the island of Ireland, because the fact of there being no hard border there was one of the key parts of the Good Friday Agreement that ended all those years of violence in Ireland. So in any case, the Internal Markets Bill, it has passed key stages in the House of Commons, the lower house of Parliament in the UK. It is not yet full UK law. It's moving on to stages in the House of Lords, the upper chamber of Parliament. Of course, there is still time on that and on the Brexit negotiations themselves, which have not yet wrapped up.
Now, while we have you on the line, Catherine, I'd just like to ask you about another EU matter. The EU Council is meeting today and tomorrow, and an energy dispute between Greece and Turkey is high on the agenda.
Yes, it certainly is. Avid watchers of the Eastern Mediterranean will be aware that Turkish boats have been exploring parts of the sea in the Eastern Mediterranean, looking to start drilling for oil, for gas. Now, this is a major maritime territory dispute. Greece is very, very unhappy about this. Cyprus very unhappy about it. In fact, Cyprus started drawing up lists of potential sanctions as far back as June of this year, and has been wanting EU member states to bring sanctions against individuals and entities inside Turkey. This has become quite the dispute. At this stage, in terms of the European summit that's now underway in Brussels, the European Union side saying that they want to find a way to have dialogue with Turkey over this, and talks have been set up between Turkey and Greece, but not Cyprus at this point. So incredibly contentious issue there. It's one of several contentious foreign policy issues, though, being dealt with at this summit. There's also the issue of sanctions against Belarus, which have been drawn up and are ready to go, but there's some questioning about whether Cyprus might be blocking those sanctions in order to try and obtain sanctions against Turkey. So it's very much a foreign policy themed European summit, as well, of course, as issues regarding the economic recovery after COVID. And there will, of course, be a mention of Brexit with an update on negotiations by Michel Barnier.
Thank you very much, Catherine Nicholson, joining us there. In other news, fighting between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region continues for a fifth day. Russia and France again calling for an end to the violence that's claimed scores of lives. Also, Russia, the US and France have issued a joint statement on the issue calling for negotiations, Moscow having offered to host talks between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Mario Sofos reports.
Heavy shelling between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces spilled over into a fifth day on Thursday. Separatist officials in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region described the overnight situation along the front line as tense. Since fighting began last Sunday, more than 100 deaths have been confirmed, including civilians, with both sides claiming to have inflicted heavy losses on the other. The separatist leadership of Karabakh, which is backed by the Armenian government, issued a warning to Azerbaijan on Wednesday.
Պատերազմը ավարտվելու է Ադրբեջանի պարտությամբ։ Արցախը իր պատմության մեջ երբևէ չի գրավել ու չի գրավվելու։
The Nagorno-Karabakh province broke away from Azerbaijan in the 1990s, shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union. Populated and controlled by ethnic Armenians, its independence is not formally recognised by any other country. A long-simmering conflict with Azerbaijan flared up again on Sunday, with each side accusing the other of starting the fighting as well as targeting civilians. The president of Azerbaijan demanded that Armenian forces leave the region on Wednesday.
Ermənistan baş naziri bizə qarşı şərtlər qoyur və bizim bir şərtimiz var, qeyd şərtsiz, tam və dərhal bizim torpaqlarımızdan çıxıb rədd olmalıdır.
The two Caucasus rivals have ignored repeated international calls to end the fighting, which risks drawing in regional powers Russia and Turkey, with Moscow backing Armenia and Ankara a staunch ally of Azerbaijan. Russian President Vladimir Putin discussed the issue by phone with French leader Emmanuel Macron on Wednesday night. Both expressed concern about reports of Turkey sending Syrian mercenaries to bolster Azerbaijani forces in Karabakh, a claim which Ankara has denied.
Now, two journalists covering that conflict have been injured. They work for French newspaper Le Monde. They were in the city of Martigny when they were injured. Now, here in France, there are just a few hours to go before the next coronavirus update by Health Minister Olivier Véran. And Paris, Lyon, Lille and Grenoble may become the latest cities having to shut down restaurants again. The Prime Minister meeting mayors today. Since the start of the week, bars in Paris have had to shut early at 10 p.m. Shirley Sitburn has more.
Will Paris, Lyon and Lille soon be placed under maximum alert? As infection rates soar, these cities are under increasing pressure. In the capital, while intensive care units haven't hit saturation points, the head of this hospital unit says the current situation is concerning.
Ce matin, nous avons 13 patients pour les 18 lits de réanimation médicale qui sont là pour un problème de pneumonie grave à la Covid-19. C'est une augmentation constante dans le temps, mais qui se fait avec une arrivée de plus en plus importante de patients, de plus en plus graves d'ailleurs.
The government has set out 3 criteria for placing a city under maximum alert. The number of new cases reaching 250 per 100,000 inhabitants in a week, 100 per 100,000 for people over 65, plus 30% of beds in intensive care units being occupied by COVID-19 patients. Paris has met all 3 conditions, hitting 263 new cases per 100,000 residents, with around half of them aged over 65. 32% of ICU beds are now occupied.
Les mêmes chiffres que ceux qui ont été observés dans le département du Bouches-du-Rhône et en Guadeloupe signifient la même tendance et la même situation inquiétante de progression de l'épidémie. C'est indéniable, donc il n'y aurait pas de raison de réagir différemment à Paris que cela a été fait en Guadeloupe et à Marseille.
In Spain, the whole of Madrid is about to go back into partial lockdown, the regional government having finally caved into a demand by the national government, but it says it'll challenge the decision in the courts. The capital and areas around it will be closed to outsiders, apart from essential visits, and bars and restaurants will have to shut at 11 p.m. Madrid's COVID caseload is double the national rate, and Spain's rate of infection is the highest in the EU. For local reactions, we spoke to our correspondent in Madrid, Sarah Morris.
Many of the centre-right and right-wing press call this a measure imposed by the left-wing central government on the Conservative and Liberal government of Madrid. They say that these measures are unfair. There's many people who believe that these measures should have been introduced far sooner because the rate of COVID-19, as you mentioned, is far higher than any other EU country. In parts of Madrid, we have COVID-19 cases of 1,000 per 100,000 residents. That means 1 in every 100 residents has tested positive. But generally, the feeling in Spain is that there has been a disagreement between the central government and the regional government, that these measures have been brought in a very chaotic manner, and that people in Madrid and other areas in Spain that could find themselves affected by this new ministerial order are really lacking the clarity that they need to go about their daily business. The general feeling is that something more should have been done, and that those health centres that are so beleaguered at the moment should really be reinforced with more doctors.
Riot police were out in force in Hong Kong today. This is the city marked China's National Day, which has become a day of grievance for Hong Kongers worried about Beijing's encroachment on freedoms. In June, Beijing imposed a new security law, and UN experts have voiced deep concerns.
Nipping any sign of dissent in the bud. Within moments of holding up their banner, these pro-democracy protesters were stopped by police on China's National Day, a holiday for these Hong Kongers that is not one of celebration, but of mourning for lost freedoms.
We demand the Chinese Communist government to end their one-party dictatorship. There should be a abolish of the national security law, and we demand release of all the political prisoners.
Demands that were also made by prominent activist Joshua Wong. For the Chinese holiday, security forces have been deployed en masse in Hong Kong. Some 6,000 officers are thought to be in the streets to stomp out any protests. Gatherings of 4 people or more are outlawed, officially because of the coronavirus risk, but also to avoid any semblance of a repeat of 2019. Last year, on China's 70th National Day anniversary, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers took to the streets. Violent clashes broke out across the city. But since then, there's been a crackdown. A sweeping security law imposed by the Chinese government went into effect in June. For the Beijing-backed leader of Hong Kong, it's been a success.
Over the past months, it's an indisputable fact that our society has returned to peace. The national security law has protected Hong Kong, and our citizens can once again exercise their rights in accordance with the law.
But pro-democracy protesters say they're being persecuted and can no longer express dissent without being jailed. Over the past 16 months, some 10,000 Hong Kongers have been detained at protests.
Now, today, France 24 is taking part in a day of solidarity with Lebanon, almost 2 months after the devastating blast in Beirut. We'll have a special debate tonight, broadcast from Beirut, and we'll bring you on our website a fundraising concert that's being held here in Paris. More than 190 people were killed in the August 4th blast, and thousands of people lost their homes. The country needs billions of dollars to rebuild.